In today's video, we are going to go over how to use Smart Status DVI checklists. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can go about doing this. So I'm going to show you each different use case scenario for the Smart Status DVI checklist, where to locate them, and how to use them from a technician standpoint along with a service writer position. Let's go ahead and get started. And I think it's probably best that we start off with the most familiar aspect of this, which is utilizing it from a technician perspective. To do that, I'm going to pull up my tablet here, and I'm logged in as my technician, Bart Smith. Now you'll see Bart has three icons here. I'm going to click on the work in progress. Now, as I click in work in progress, the checklist will be identified via the little logo on the left-hand side. Now, the checklist naming is dependent on what you specifically want to call it, but we just called ours a free courtesy check. You can see we have some of them in green, and then some of the checklists are listed in red. Now, the checklists listed in red are ones that are not complete yet, while the ones that are listed in green are checklists that we have already completed. So let's take a look at a checklist that we have not completed or touched yet. So when we click into this checklist, you can see that the technicians started going through some of the options here on the checklist. And the way you utilize a checklist is really simple. You just tap on the icon, whether it's green or red. For instance, if this battery was not okay, I would click on the red icon, and then it would go ahead and let me choose a reason as to why the item needs more attention. So I could go ahead and say needs attention immediately. I can also list the cold cranking amps. As we go through this list, we can add more options along with photos to any of the additional items. You can see we sort of stopped here at the transmission fluid, and we have our coolant. And let's say if the coolant was, maybe at its time interval to change it, we can go ahead and put that in here, and we can say needs attention immediately. Washer fluid's okay, so we'll put a check mark in there. We check the horn, it's okay. Headlights are okay. The left front tire was okay. Let's say the right front tire was not okay, and it needs attention immediately. We can also go ahead and document any of our concerns via a photo. So how do we do that? Well, we click on the little photo icon, and it'll ask us if we want to go ahead and attach a new image or add an existing image. Now, if you attach an existing image, those images will come over from the gallery on your device. You can just go ahead and choose those directly from the gallery. Otherwise, what you can do is opt to go ahead and add a new image directly from this window here. Okay, so now we've got a photo here. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And we'll say, again, nail in rear tire. And then I will click on edit. I'm going to go ahead and add an arrow. And then we can also add a circle outlining where that actual nail is. And then from here, all I have to do is hit save and save one more time, which will allow that image to save directly to the RO, and it'll also allow it to save directly to the checklist. So what's great about this is everything that we're doing on Carol's vehicle is happening in real time. So if I back out of the checklist, in order for my service writer to be able to see these images, the technician has to back out of the checklist. If you're not exiting the checklist, it's not going to write it to the checklist file here. So here's Carol Jenkins' vehicle here. Under the reference tab, you'll notice there's this little invoice icon. So if I click on the invoice icon, you'll see here's the photo that we just took, and then along with the courtesy inspection. Again, this image and this data that we see here will only be seen if the technician backs out of the repair order. So if they're still editing things within the repair order and taking photos, those photos don't get transferred until they're done with the ticket itself. We can also change the resolution in which this image displays. Under the tablet configurations, there is an option to use high resolution. Just keep in mind, if you use the high resolution imagery, it will take up a little bit more space and take sometimes a little bit longer for it to send. I always find the sweet spot is directly in the middle for the images. I think that's more than adequate for what we're trying to do. Let's go back to the courtesy check. So as we go through the courtesy check, in order for these icons to go green, all items must be completed on the courtesy check. So you can see here's a checklist that we went through, and everything is completely filled in. And you can see we have a photo here. If we click on that photo, there's just an image of what would be a rear tire. in which we can send to the customer. Now, part of using the checklist is that you as a technician can go through and check off these items, but these are also universal. As a service writer, you can also modify the checklist as well by going into Smart Status Touch Command. So for instance, we can see here's a list of all of our repair orders currently. And if I wanted to sort by my service writer, for instance, maybe it's Andy Adams, or if I wanted to sort by Earl Jones, whoever is working on the most vehicles. So here's Jerry Parker's ticket, or maybe Bart Smith's, Aaron Karn's ticket. We can click on this and take a look at what the technician has recommended on this courtesy inspection. So let's say we want to add some more details to this courtesy inspection. We can go ahead and click Edit Checklist, and we can go ahead and add other details directly from this window here. Like we can say, air filter was dirty. And if you add descriptions to an item that maybe needs attention or may require attention but doesn't need an attention immediately, you'll notice that the comments go in as yellow. So it's a nice option to have available to be able to draw that customer's attention to the line items that you are looking to show them. You can send them an email directly, providing that you do have a customer's email on file. You can click Send Email, and in this case, it would send it if I had a valid email configured in our writer, but if we did, it would allow it to process and go through. You can also send a text message directly from this window here as well by clicking the text icon if you have a valid phone number, but if we did, we would be able to send that text message directly to the customers. I do find that a lot of customers actually prefer the text messages over the emails simply because guess what everybody has already available? It's their messaging app. Not everybody has their email connected to their phone, so when you send them a text message with that courtesy check, they're getting it in real time and able to open it and view it directly from their phone or tablet and zoom in and see all these photos. All right, so let's talk about checklist dashboards. So part of going through these checklists, we want to make sure our technicians are actually completing the checklist. So I'm going to put in some data here from the past year here, and I'm going to click refresh. Now, as I go through this, you can see we have a total of 2,044 ROs that have been processed through our store system. And of those ROs, only 5 of them had courtesy checks or checklists on them. That's a combination between courtesy check and state inspections. Now, what is really interesting about this, it gives you analytics for each of your service writers that have written up tickets with courtesy checks, along with how many defects and completed checklist for each service writer. Now, obviously, the service writers aren't the one completing the checklist, but the completion ratio falls upon the technician to complete. Obviously, it's a two-person, force when you're dealing with checklists because the technician is going to get the checklist from the service writer, so it's up to the service writer to make sure the technician is going through and completing the checklist. So as we look through this, we can see Carl Nicholson has 3 out of 3 of his checklist completed for 100%. He's also found three defects, which gives us a 9.68% of findings on his courtesy checks. And that's where Bart Smith has recommended no defects, who has a 0% ratio, and he has a total of 3 courtesy checks that have been done, but only 1 actually completed. So it gives you some analytics that you can go off of. And down here below, you can see here's the different checklists that are available. We have our courtesy check, and then of course we also have our motor vehicle inspection in which we can gauge again. So it looks like the courtesy check for the motor vehicle inspection is the one that is being completed the most. As I said, in order for these checklists to become completed, they do need to complete all items on the checklist. So as we scroll through this particular checklist here, you'll notice that all the items are completed. This icon that we see here does not turn green until all the items are completed. Now, how does the service writer know whether or not these icons are completed or the checklists have been completed? Well, if you come into the checklist tab, you can see we have checklists that were completed. It also will give us notification on whether or not we've sent an email to the customer. So anything that we have an email icon next to, we've already sent that checklist via email to the customer.